Emma Taylor boarded the first-class section of the London to New York flight, wearing comfortable jeans and a simple jumper. At 42, she had worked hard to build her financial company from nothing. Today, she just wanted to be comfortable for the long journey. As Emma approached her seat, she noticed how the other first-class passengers were dressed in expensive suits and designer clothes. She didn't care much for showing off wealth, preferring to invest her money wisely instead. Her company, Prosperity Financial Solutions, had grown from a small office in Manchester to having branches across the UK. But looking at her, no one would guess she was worth millions. William, the flight attendant with perfectly combed blonde hair and a crisp uniform, blocked her path. His smile dropped when he saw her casual outfit. "Excuse me, miss. This is first class," he said with a smirk. "Economy boarding is not for another 30 minutes. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out her ticket. "I'm in the right place. Seat 2A. William's eyes widened slightly as he checked her ticket. He nodded stiffly and stepped aside without an apology. As Emma stored her small bag in the overhead compartment, she noticed William hurrying over to another flight attendant. "Lucy," William whispered, not quite quietly enough. "Look at the woman in 2A. How did she afford first class? She looks like she can barely afford the bus." Lucy, a tall woman with red hair pulled tightly back, glanced at Emma and gave a small laugh. Maybe she won a contest, or perhaps she's someone's cleaner. Emma pretended not to hear as she settled into her wide leather seat. It wasn't the first time people had judged her by appearance. Growing up on a council estate in Manchester, she'd faced such attitudes her entire life. Those judgments had only pushed her to work harder. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, offering champagne to the passengers. Lucy served the businessman beside Emma with a warm smile. "Good morning, sir. Welcome aboard. Can I offer you some champagne before take off?" When she reached Emma, her smile vanished. "Drink?" she asked flatly. "Orange juice, please," Emma replied. Lucy nodded and moved on without another word. Minutes later, she returned with drinks for everyone except Emma. When Emma politely reminded her about the orange juice, Lucy muttered an insincere apology. Throughout the meal service, Emma noticed the pattern continuing. The flight attendants chatted warmly with other passengers, asked if they needed anything, and promptly responded to their requests. For Emma, there were only cold stares and forgotten orders. "Some people just don't belong here," Lucy said loudly as she passed Emma's seat after serving the meal. She didn't bother to lower her voice. A man in an expensive suit across the aisle looked at Emma with pity. Emma smiled back at him calmly. She didn't need his pity. What these people thought of her didn't matter. She knew who she was. As the flight continued, Emma took out her laptop and began working on presentation slides for her meeting in New York. Her company was planning to launch a new financial app designed to help people from lower-income backgrounds build credit and save money. The project was close to her heart. William passed by and glanced at her screen. "Working on a school project?" he asked with a smirk. "Something like that," Emma replied quietly, not bothering to correct him. Emma thought about her journey as she typed. Her father had worked 2 jobs, one at a factory and another as a night security guard. Her mother had cleaned houses for wealthy families. They had taught her the value of hard work and treating everyone with respect. Now her company employed over 200 people, and she made sure none of her staff ever treated customers differently based on how they looked or dressed. Everyone deserved dignity. When the flight attendants came around with immigration forms, they handed them to everyone except Emma. "Excuse me," Emma said to William. "May I have an immigration form?" "Oh, did we miss you?" he replied with fake surprise. "I assumed you'd completed one before. You don't look like you travel first class often." Emma accepted the form without comment. She filled it out carefully, writing CEO, Prosperity Financial Solutions in the occupation field. The company that was now worth over $20 million. The company that, ironically, had a corporate travel account with this very airline worth $6.2 million annually. As the plane began its descent into New York, Emma closed her laptop and looked out the window at the city lights below. Tomorrow, she would meet with American investors who wanted to partner with her company. She would wear her usual simple clothes, and some might underestimate her then too. But Emma Taylor had learned long ago that being underestimated could be powerful. People revealed their true character when they thought no one important was watching. And tomorrow, after her meetings, she had an appointment with the airline's regional director. Something would have to change. Emma settled into her hotel room at the Plaza, overlooking Central Park. The luxury suite was a stark contrast to the treatment she'd received on the flight. She kicked off her shoes and sat cross-legged on the king-sized bed, still in her comfortable jeans and jumper. The Manhattan skyline glittered through the window as evening fell. Emma should have been reviewing her presentation for tomorrow's meeting with American investors, but her mind kept returning to those whispered comments and disapproving looks from William and Lucy. How did she afford first class? She looks like she can barely afford the bus. Emma walked to the minibar and poured herself a small glass of water. She wasn't angry, not exactly, she was tired. Tired of being judged, overlooked and dismissed based on appearance alone. Growing up on the Wythenshawe Council estate in Manchester had taught Emma early lessons about how people see you when you don't have money. Her school uniform had been second-hand, her shoes worn at the edges. The other children noticed. The teachers noticed too. Mr. Thompson's words echoed in her memory as clearly as if he'd just spoken them. During career day in Year 11, when Emma had mentioned her dream of starting her own business, he'd laughed. "You'll never amount to anything with that attitude," he'd said in front of the entire class. "People from your background need realistic goals, perhaps aim for shop work." Emma smiled slightly at the memory now. Mr. Thompson had actually done her a favor. His doubt had lit a fire in her that burned to this day. She opened her laptop and logged into her company's financial dashboard. The screen displayed Prosperity Financial Solutions accounts in neat columns of figures. The travel budget alone stood at $6.2 million annually, money spent mostly with Royal Sky Airlines for her employees' business trips. Emma had built her company with a simple mission: provide banking and financial services to people who traditional banks overlooked. People like her parents, who'd never been able to get a loan despite working honest jobs their entire lives. People judged by their postcodes and appearances rather than their character and potential. Now her company employed over 200 people and had helped thousands of families access fair banking services. Last year's profits had exceeded $35 million. Her phone buzzed with a text from her elderly mother. "How was the flight, love? All set for your big meeting?" Emma typed back, "Flight was interesting. Meeting tomorrow will go well. How's Dad's garden coming along?" She didn't mention the incident. Her parents had faced enough discrimination in their lives. They didn't need to hear about their daughter experiencing it too. Outside her window, the lights of New York twinkled like stars. Emma had come so far from that council estate, yet some things never changed. People still made the same assumptions. She picked up her phone and called her assistant. "Robert? Sorry to bother you so late." "No problem, Emma. How was the flight?" Robert's voice was cheerful, familiar. "Educational," Emma replied. "Listen, I need you to prepare some documents for me." "For tomorrow's investor meeting?" "I sent those to your email this morning." "No, different documents. I need paperwork showing our travel expenditure with Royal Sky Airlines. And I need to make a withdrawal." "How much?" Robert asked, the sound of typing in the background. $2 million, Emma replied calmly. There was a pause. "The entire travel budget? Emma, are you sure?" "Yes. And book me on tomorrow's return flight. With Royal Sky Airlines. First class, same as today. I've decided to cut my trip short." "What about the investor meeting?" "Reschedule it for next month. This is more important." After ending the call, Emma sat back against the plush hotel pillows. She wasn't planning anything dramatic or vengeful. She simply believed in consequences, natural ones that followed poor choices. The airline needed to understand that how they treated people mattered, regardless of how those people looked. Emma had spent her entire life proving people wrong. Mr. Thompson, the bank manager who'd refused her first business loan, the landlord, who'd questioned whether she could afford the rent on her first office space. Tomorrow would be no different, but this time she wouldn't just prove them wrong, she would help them learn to be better. Emma closed her laptop and finally began to prepare for bed. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about William and Lucy's faces when they realized who she really was. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about education. Some lessons were expensive. This one would cost exactly $6.2 million. Emma boarded the return flight to London just 24 hours after arriving in New York. Her assistant Robert had been surprised when she cancelled her important investor meetings, but Emma knew this matter couldn't wait. Some things were more important than business. She wore the same comfortable jeans and simple jumper as yesterday. Not because she had nothing else to wear. Her hotel suite had a wardrobe full of business attire, but because she wanted to make a point. As she approached the first-class cabin, Emma spotted William and Lucy preparing the pre-flight drinks. Their eyes widened when they saw her, and William's perfect smile faltered. "Good morning," Emma said pleasantly. "Seat 2A again, please." William checked her ticket with a tight nod. "Of course. Welcome back." Emma noticed how William and Lucy exchanged quick glances. They hadn't expected to see her again so soon, especially not dressed the same way. As Emma settled into her seat, she opened her bag and removed a small recording device. Her company developed financial software, but Emma had learned early in her career to document everything. Yesterday's flight had taught her that this policy extended beyond business meetings. "Would you like a drink before takeoff?" Lucy asked, her voice strained with forced politeness. "Orange juice, please," Emma replied. "And this time I'd actually like to receive it." Lucy's cheeks flushed red. She nodded and hurried away. Throughout the flight, Emma noticed the same pattern as yesterday. While the service was slightly less openly hostile, it remained cold and distant. Her meal arrived last. Her requests for water were forgotten. The flight attendants still whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. "She's back." "Same clothes and everything," Emma overheard William say to Lucy during meal service. "Probably spent her whole year's savings on these flights." Emma smiled to herself and continued working on her presentation, not for the investors she'd planned to meet, but for the meeting she'd arranged for tomorrow. As the plane began its descent into London, Emma pulled out a small notebook and made careful notes about every interaction she'd had with the staff over both flights. Times, names, specific comments. She'd been collecting evidence. When the plane landed and passengers began to disembark, Emma remained seated until most had left. Then she approached William and Lucy as they were clearing the cabin. "Excuse me," Emma said politely. "I'd like to speak to your manager, please." William looked nervous. "Is there a problem with your flight?" "Yes," Emma replied calmly. "But not just with you, with the whole company culture." Lucy glanced anxiously at William. "The customer service desk can help you file a complaint." "I don't want to file a complaint," Emma said. "I want to speak to someone with authority, now." 20 minutes later, Emma sat across from James Brooks, the customer service manager at Heathrow Airport. He was a balding man in his 50s with an expression of practiced concern. "I understand there was an issue with your flight, Ms. Taylor," Emma supplied. "Emma Taylor." She calmly explained the treatment she had received over both flights, the comments about her appearance, the assumptions about her financial status, the deliberately poor service. "I recorded several of these interactions," Emma added, placing her small recording device on the desk. James looked increasingly uncomfortable as Emma played selected clips. William and Lucy's voices were clearly identifiable. "I'm very sorry, Ms. Taylor," James said, looking genuinely embarrassed. "This is completely unacceptable. We'll certainly discipline these employees immediately." "That's not what I want," Emma replied, reaching into her bag. She slid a business card across the table. It was simple, elegant. "Emma Taylor, CEO, Prosperity Financial Solutions. I want to speak to your CEO, tomorrow at 10 a.m. James picked up the card. He blinked, read it again, and his eyes widened in recognition. "You're Emma Taylor? The Emma Taylor, the CEO of Prosperity Financial?" "The same," Emma nodded. "And your airline's biggest corporate client?" "We spent $6.2 million with Royal Sky Airlines last year alone." James's face went pale. I'll arrange the meeting immediately." Emma stood and collected her things. "Good. And please make sure William and Lucy attend as well. This isn't about punishment. It's about learning." As Emma walked away, she thought about all the people who couldn't fight back like she could, the ones without $6.2 million in leverage. Tomorrow wasn't just about her. It was about them too. Emma arrived at the Royal Sky Airlines headquarters precisely at 10 a.m. The glass and steel building towered above the London streets, reflecting the morning sunlight. She wore her usual jeans and jumper, but carried an expensive leather briefcase her team had given her after their first £1 million profit. The receptionist looked surprised when Emma gave her name. Within seconds, an assistant appeared to escort her directly to the top floor. No waiting room, no delays. Word had clearly spread about who she was. Thomas Wilson's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames. Thomas himself stood as Emma entered, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. His smile seemed forced. "Ms. Taylor, thank you for coming," Thomas said, extending his hand. "We are deeply sorry about your experience with our airline." James Brooks from customer service sat nervously on a sofa. Beside him was a woman Emma didn't recognize, who was quickly introduced as Olivia Bennett, the airline's PR director. Her expression was guarded, professional. "I appreciate you making time for this meeting," Emma replied, taking a seat in the offered chair. She noticed a jug of water and glasses had been prepared, very different from her treatment on the flights. "Miss Taylor, before we begin, I want to assure you that the employees involved have been suspended pending investigation," Thomas began. Emma held up her hand. "I didn't come for apologies or to hear about punishments. I came to show you something." She opened her laptop and turned the screen to face them. On the screen was a bank transfer page from her company's account. "This is 6.2 million, Emma said simply. "It's what my company spends on flights with your airline every year." Thomas swallowed hard. James looked down at his hands. Olivia started making notes. "I could press this button right now and move these funds to your competitor," Emma continued, "but that's not why I'm here." She closed the laptop and looked directly at Thomas Wilson. "I grew up on a council estate in Manchester," Emma said. "My mum cleaned houses for rich families. She would leave at 5 a.m. and return at 7 p.m., her hands red and raw from cleaning products. My dad worked 2 jobs, at a factory during the day and as a night watchman. I remember him falling asleep at the dinner table because he was so tired." The room was completely silent. Even Olivia had stopped writing. "I built my company to help people like them, people who are judged by how they look or where they come from, people who can't get loans from regular banks because of their postcodes or their jobs." Emma reached for her phone and placed it on the table. "I'd like you to hear something." She played the recordings from both flights. William and Lucy's voices filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "How did she afford first class? She looks like she can barely afford the bus. Some people just don't belong here. She's back. Same clothes and everything, probably spent her whole year's savings on these flights." Olivia closed her eyes briefly. James looked physically ill. When the recordings ended, Emma put her phone away. "I could withdraw this money right now. I could tell my story to the press. A wealthy black business owner humiliated by your staff. It would make quite a headline. But that's not why I'm here." Thomas leaned forward anxiously. "What do you want, Miss Taylor?" "I want change," Emma replied firmly. "Real change, not just suspensions and apologies." Emma reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "In this folder is a proposal. My company has an educational division that trains banks and financial institutions about unconscious bias. We've helped dozens of companies improve how they treat customers from all backgrounds." She slid the folder across the desk. "I want Royal Sky Airlines to implement a comprehensive training program for every employee, from the CEO to the baggage handlers. I want your company to become a leader in treating people with dignity, regardless of how they look or what they wear." Thomas picked up the folder, genuine interest showing on his face for the first time. "And what about the 6.2 million, he asked. "It stays with Royal Sky if you make these changes. If not—" Emma glanced at her laptop. "I understand," Thomas said quickly. "Would you be willing to work with us on this?" Emma nodded. "On one condition. William and Lucy, I want them involved, not fired, not punished, involved." Olivia looked confused. "I'm sorry, but they insulted you, discriminated against you, and you want to keep them employed?" "Firing them doesn't solve the problem," Emma replied. "It just moves it somewhere else. I want them to learn and help others learn. Sometimes the people who most need to change can become the strongest advocates once they understand. Thomas looked thoughtful. It's an unusual approach. So is judging someone's worth by their clothes, Emma said with a small smile. Let's try something different. 1 year later, Emma stood in the first-class line at Heathrow Airport, ready to board another Royal Sky Airlines flight to New York. She wore her favorite comfortable jeans and a simple blue jumper. Some habits never changed. Success hadn't altered her preference for comfort over fashion. The past year had been transformative for both Emma's company and Royal Sky Airlines. After her meeting with Thomas Wilson, the airline had embraced her proposal for company-wide training. What began as a response to discrimination had evolved into something much bigger. As Emma approached the gate, she noticed Lucy standing at the boarding entrance. Lucy looked different now. Her posture was more relaxed, her smile genuine. She wore the standard Royal Sky uniform, but with an additional badge that read Inclusion Ambassador in bright blue letters. "Welcome aboard, Miss Taylor," Lucy said when Emma reached the front of the line. There was no trace of the cold disdain from a year ago. Instead, her eyes showed genuine respect and something else, gratitude. "Thank you, Lucy," Emma replied with a warm smile. "New York again. We have your favorite orange juice ready at your seat," Lucy said, "and the cabin temperature is set how you prefer it." As Emma made her way to seat 2A, she noticed small changes throughout the first-class cabin. The flight attendants were interacting with all passengers with the same level of respect and attention, regardless of how they were dressed or what they looked like. An elderly man in worn clothing was being helped with his bag by a young male attendant who treated him with perfect courtesy. Emma settled into her seat and thought back to that meeting in Thomas Wilson's office. After she'd presented her proposal, Thomas had surprised her by embracing it completely. Royal Sky Airlines had not only implemented the training program but had gone further. They'd created a new company policy that made respect and inclusion core values, not just nice words in an employee handbook. William and Lucy hadn't been fired as many had expected. Instead, they had become central to the change. Their initial embarrassment had transformed into determination to help others learn from their mistakes. The $6.2 million had stayed with the airline, but with conditions. A portion now funded the Sky High Scholars Program, a scholarship for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds to train in aviation. The first class of 20 scholars had just completed their training, with several joining Royal Sky as junior staff. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Emma's phone buzzed with a message. She opened it to find a photo from William, who wasn't working this flight. The picture showed him standing in front of a class of new flight attendants. On the whiteboard behind him were the words, "First-class service means seeing the person, not the appearance." The message below read, "Thank you for not ending our careers. You taught us that true class has nothing to do with money." Today's training going well. These new recruits are asking great questions. Emma smiled and typed back, "Keep up the good work." The flight attendants began their safety demonstration as the plane taxied to the runway. Emma watched Lucy move confidently through the cabin, making eye contact with each passenger, treating each one as important. A year ago, Lucy couldn't even see Emma as a person worthy of respect. Now she was teaching others to look beyond appearances. The transformation wasn't perfect, change never is, but it was real. As the plane lifted off, Emma looked out the window at London growing smaller below. The clouds were thick today, creating a fluffy carpet beneath the aircraft. She thought about her parents, both gone now, and wondered what they would think of all this. Her mother, who had cleaned homes for wealthy people who rarely looked her in the eye. Her father, who had worked himself to exhaustion for wages that barely covered the bills. She had built her financial company for them, to help people like them get fair treatment from banks. And now, somehow, that mission had expanded to airlines as well. Emma's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Thomas Wilson. "Customer satisfaction up 23% this quarter. Staff retention improved 15%. You were right. Dignity is good business." Emma put her phone away and accepted a glass of orange juice from Lucy. Sometimes the most powerful response to prejudice wasn't anger or revenge. It was education and opportunity. Instead of destroying careers, she had helped transform them. Instead of withdrawing her money in anger, she had invested it in change. She had turned her humiliation into hope for others.